going on your live. Hello, YouTubers, people who just watch YouTube videos. There are important things going in the world, and that is a phrase. I mean, that is a sentence that has been repeated through lifetimes, connected to our own, because we are in a negative identity of value nature progression since semi-ancient times. There are proofs that the ancients had had received nature and uses of the words in the dictionaries before criminal foreign influences as a nature of sophistication that has not been allowed its short words proper, and how this has been gotten away with has been leveraged through what they've been using. It is recorded that I don't have, and me and everyone else, we only have good feelings towards people at the campuses we went to. All exceptions, exception nature, and demonstration is the same thing. There's a method that employed a whole bunch of distinct identities of criminal insidiousness as what witch trials are about, whether they were made up or not, whether they were made up for good reasons to help us, because our founders who had to counter extort the other founders know as Americans and as other countries' founders. This was because they had to hide their roles, forcing everyone they had to do damage control. There was still in roles entrenched, had been already sustained uses of value nature systems, tactically ulterior, from one that wanted that is hyper native pure. That one system, the Native Americans are hyper additionally Native Americanized. But see, we're all apart from that hyper native system. And so we have to take positions for and with them. Like, for example, where they have to, the requirements of them to be considered a tribe. What is considered research or logical regarding their culture. Meanwhile, measured and maintained is when people say, as our founders had roles with slavery. Our founders told us to counter slavery. They set the North and the South up to counter slavery, both as fakes because they were both still roles with the entrenched. Possessions of logic, possessions of identity, the ground voicings, names that were used remotely from abroad because they knew there would be instances as they knew that as effectively they are used today. And there are intercultural, where the cultures were all differences per the system, rather than being used to demonstrate how it is about what is hyper additional to itself, that we could trace using science, discerning the increasing value too of the discernment of how the hyper simultaneous is a distinct identity of sequence / simultaneous nature from how being an individual is, from how that is being grouped differences, ages, areas, sexes. Same thing with the other species, bodies too. 3 volumes, individually grouped in an individual species body. No. A group can't deal with the finite. We cannot leave out where and how the overt criminal enterprises and private ones and insidiousness of people A through Z, where they are being and how having been used remotely per the summary of the laws, per the laws grouped, and per them only as roles, though, differentially criminally foreign influence. what Jim Crow laws were about and are about is, for example, all treatments of it have left out how differential criminal foreign influences are about. No one wanted to be part with those laws. No one wanted to be part with what they caused, which is complete possession of instances, treatments, and uses of that which is off the record, measuring and maintaining what effectively was and is used to measure and maintain. Even countries grouped voicings and uses of locations, criminally foreign influence, simultaneously delusions raw. They're using wars and their methods to keep uses of words like defense. They're not, look at, we're still in the suburbs are designed since before our founding parents were born. But before our founders' parents were born, they designed the suburbs tactically to nature, already having been sustained against colonists, and then already against them and against Native Americans at the same time. Consciously for everyone to blame other things, others, or ourselves, even when correctly. Exactly the way the breaching method used, because nature was and is increasingly demonstrating its presence too, with all names, uses, and their logic uses. I'm not a doctor. There are proofs that I would have been a doctor already. But they have types of doctors that don't fit, and you have to respect types of experts that have roles with criminally foreign influence uses of database locations. Let alone they're going to speak for how computers work. Computers work in locations, and they work with how identity works. See, at the border, the immigration problems with these countries, even though they have the technology to go to outer space, and control all the networks and control the difference, the appearance of the difference, because all that is controlled too by the breaching method, grouped too. Know how they never spoke for how nature shows us that it uses value and identity to additional ways with those we know and can discern. As that extent we can grapple with, that is finite. And that is too finite for us to grapple with but one way. And know that being together. We know to an extent. And the exceptions is endeavor. Not having, recorded a whole bunch of ways prevented the quality of fact, cheap in nature. So what witch trials were about, what simultaneously was manifest was slavery. What even Jim Crow laws are about are where time is being used by overt criminal enterprises, private ones, other countries individually grouped and together. All exceptions, exception nature tied to them. Like private with prisons, like private with their state offices, like private with the state offices of judiciaries. This method was sophistication before it effectively employed all natures of sophistication / non-sophistication as collusions, as uses of logic, and as uses of nature called criminal insidiousness. I am not a lawyer. I would like to be a lawyer on the law, I mean, but we need to liberate the bar itself. These are how these locations are being used. We have other ages and natures of database tied locations and campuses involved with predicate acts and predicate act methods at campuses that have nothing to do with those. And what has nothing to do with it is also acting at other locations, where and how they gotten away with is simultaneously inseparable from, we have to keep it inseparable, make it inseparable, even though it has not been even allowed to be joined with where and how there are these real causes of negative value nature progressions. In other words, there are more shootings reported on MSNBC, CNN, and Fox News today at the campuses. They are recorded with Fox News, Fox Connecticut News, and WFSB and WTNH. They also, where they are good people, they make confessions, confess, demonstrate, recorded, confirm. They were influenced by the intelligence community. They're also influenced where they're to pretend other simultaneously, but they also recorded, in other words, they recorded fake conversations with me. And they lied about the nature of communications with me afterwards and about that. They replaced audio and video over phone. They have wire crime methods, the agencies. They have this with adults since they were kids. Now this is where they're having everyone use other people's names, and where they make strangers appear to be other, with a complete strangers, with exceptions where people walk by students and they remember that name because of the way they make people remember it too. Tactical terror from how they're supposed to be using their positions, and words like education and memory. And names, every name. So I have to use names of people that I don't even know, that pretended passions and emotions behind my back, and made people film it to look like I know them, or that things were true that they were saying. As people involved with a whole bunch of different natures of organized crime, overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and interbranch, they have roles through time, planting predicate acts roles, where they use the right to lie, and they have used the right to lie. A whole bunch of people tied to James Comey, and to Central Connecticut State University, and to Trinity College, who recorded themselves simultaneously, seeking me out as strangers, knowing they tried to pretend other by making fake. Some cases they don't, because this is also, they're attaching everyone to fake words. And then they try to make evidences where you use their names, and they're lying about our motivations. They're forcing people to go between courts to have collusions with overt criminal enterprises, lawyers, relative to recorded effective conscious uses of other replaced, of other self-valued, being and having been self-valued, replacing what our founders left us to communicate for themselves. For example, when someone would say that our founders had roles with slavery, sickly distinctly our campuses and the natures of them, and sickly distinctly the overt criminal enterprises, and sickly distinctly the private ones, where and how the overt criminal enterprises and private ones have motivations to hide life progressions is because they have roles with illusions from the past with their family members, where culture has been used effectively and is being used effectively in our faces, where people who use words like legislation and have means to such platforms to make voicings, that's where it failed. Is the hypernative voice. That is the Constitution unabridged. That is, it can't be that alone. So it has to be hyper additionally Native American rights. The ground works with those rights, in ways that are still criminalized because it can't be, it's tactically denatured, and that can't be afforded by any nature of wealth individually grouped or together unless we are not just together, unity, and while independence its way. We have to be, with that leading. There is that identity that is hyper invisible but still discernible. That is can lead that way. It is the only by that is the order of the finite, while it is the order of the active. And that, to an extent, we know is progressive value from the extent we could be. Generation, the way it is in generation with each volume, including our own, the way it is, its system won't change. Only increasingly positive to itself, while being positive as identity is. Relativity to positive and negative simultaneously. Relativity to value, where value is nature / nature as value simultaneously. And relative to the value of that simultaneously, because that's what it looks like from inside. What is greater than us and more finite than us, while as us, while not, and while as the mixture of that, and while as that. For example, again, individual grouped and together. This is a method of contemplation that the ancients used prayer as a method. In other words, if its identity of relationship to itself, and the only increasing value of that, and the order of the finite, what is active and what is progressive. For example, take the subject of New York's infrastructure. Hello, greetings. Before America was even founded, the suburbs that had been designed tactically to nature. The colonists were being tortured. The colonists were being measured and maintained from abroad. The way they measured and maintained uses of their fact treatment nature, of their sense and sensibilities, to use Jane Austen's phrase, was by measuring and maintaining reactions to uses of instances, where those instances were collusions forced to entertain into self-value, criminally foreign influence, positive treatments, and negative treatments that were simultaneously leveraged effectively to keep identity treatments. For example, uses of the names of the colonies, uses of the names of the colony stewards interbranch, manifest because nature holds it that way. Because not only are we this trinity, it is showing us how it is hyper additionally itself, its identity of relationship to itself, and the value of that. And exceptions in exception nature that appear to be in demonstration of the other are in demonstration of the same thing, while being about how it is positive to these 5 identities of sequence nature / simultaneous nature, simultaneously or not. And criminal insidiousness is discerned through nature's system as positive or negative or not, where and how everything is automatically, to an extent, only increasingly positive. But see, a special difference comes into this. So nature's nature, and the only increasing value of that also demonstrates to us that the other species also have the same consciousness. We are breaking down further the physical we eat every day. Nature is telling us, make sure you care about its system, its way of discerning positive or negative. See, the pantheism was demonstrably, not just more probably, but it was more probably and more demonstrably having been revealed before criminal foreign influences that once entertained cannot defend logic and the nature towards any subject treatment, towards any theater treatment, and afford short words of anyone else proper. Now, after that was sustained. See, what it sustained was identity of the ground locations needing to highlight progressions to other locations. What it sustained was where and how it employed difference slash S, differences slash differences, tactical to apart with a system slash S, although any systems, entertaining systems other than its own as the one that is the order of the finite, the one that is the order of the active. See, so in other words, there was significance greater than we realize of where and how we can discern Native American rights abridged distinctly from our own. That's discernment of the Constitution having been abridged. That's discernment of causes of it. The breaching method knew that we would have to voice those causes. Breaching method already employed other motivations, narratives, apparent, and to stay past and present. This already had people shown where it uses the branches of government, certain type of victim. The North and the South were certain kind of victim, where the only means to cause positive value nature progressions, acts, and natures, to counter all the causes of the real cause, singular, as the breaching method, of all the other causes that it employed, that it propagated, self-cultivated, only capable of being, only allowed to be. A lot of shootings in America are about what is only allowed to be. For a long time, only victim predator roles, formally and informally, have been allowed to speak for what causes the shootings in New York City. Clearer than day from here, from Wethersfield, Connecticut, next to Hartford, Connecticut, between New York and Boston. This is where our founders left us to demonstrate. Slavery had been left entrenched in the North and South as one part of that slavery method against everyone. That was completely syntactically syntactical possession, a singular syntactical possession method, which sustained is simultaneously identity theft / fraud / slander method. The Native American culture individually grouped and together. There is an identity theft / fraud / slander method upon them that we all could discern, because it is upon ourselves too, sickly distinctly, because there is difference. And where that syntactical difference is manifest, it is manifest with subject treatments, with the sciences, with American history. Therefore, at these campuses, note where the shootings are taking place. The FBI has male and female directors and assistant directors involved with MSNBC sources, Fox News sources, CNN sources, as people roles, even sending, dealing with the victims' families. They have victim families forced, tricked, hurt, persuaded to roles with the worst, some of the worst predicate acts methods, whole methods of them that are fact, cheap, and nature oriented. See, this is a method that effectively uses and has used them filming things. Just the fact that they're recorded themselves filming fake exceptions of people knowing each other. And simultaneously, while they're telling lies where they use the right to lie, where they don't have the right to lie. In the background, on parks, at people's homes. Same time where people don't even never were around each other. They pretending passions, emotions. They already did this. It's how the intelligence community has roles with recorded, effective, sickly, distinctly possession of democratic individual leaders and Republican individual leaders. Logic. They are preventing them short words. Everyone's waiting, so they want to try to get a chance, or just ignoring it, giving up on it. That quality of fact should be nature that doesn't leave out the one way we have to use the order of the finite, to use the actual identity of possession, hyper-possession, as it. What is positive? See, only itself can be might. And the order of the finite, the most delicate, they grapple with the finite completely, perfectly, at the same time. It's one of the ways we could discern the hyper simultaneous distinctly. The value of being able to discern an individual grouped in the species volume as three bound volume signs, positive simultaneously or not to logic. So there are needs to discern algebraic logic, healed. And so we could discern this by discerning. Left to right, algebraic consciousness is simultaneously left to right additional ways as consciousness algebraic. And for example, alpha and omega. This is alphabet this is alphabet cipher to be deciphered for the same reason or relative to how and why our founders had to counter extort to other founders and force everyone to blame other causes for their motivations. See, there were legitimate reasons for our interbranch to lie about their motivations regarding their roles with instances and subject treatments, because everyone's voice was being measured and maintained by a torture method simultaneously, differentially involved with a slavery method against everyone. It's fact, treatment, nature, syntax, nature. Therefore, they're against their identity. And they're supposed to pretend other. That means their relationships, the reliance upon positive treatments and negative treatments simultaneously, which are simultaneously identity treatments. It is hyper evidential that and how we have never treated these things that are true always. In other words, the hyper evidential exists. because not just American, not just the human species is individual grouped together. In those differences, alpha and omega, male, female, and a quality of diffusion there. A trinity is there. The Old Testament and the Quran were written with consciousness, for example, that their stewards would also remain collusions. Like the Constitution was written with consciousness that their stewards were going to remain collusions with that method that effectively measures and maintains through our own though, so through other motivations, nature's needs, and parent too. And see, those are the things that people are going to discern. First, with when using how we have black pupils, white survives, for example, to be as means to discern when doctors of various natures as the sources, and including the ones with the badges and gavels of the networks. They have roles of wire crime action methods and mail crime action methods and medicines crimes with little kids, with elderly methods that involve the natures of courts individually grouped together. So a whole bunch of people with Hartford Hospital have roles with planting evidences on off campuses, on streets, having been influenced to it with the FBI and with other agencies and with military. And a bunch of them will court confess, demonstrate, confirm has roles with Elm Streets and Rocky Hill and Weathersfield, which and their conjunctions to names associated with the state judicial branch offices. Now, this is where everyone was employed as a victim / hyper victim, blaming other things, others, ourselves, and or sensing that, where and how logic is used. And so we have subject treatments like violence and mental health. Mental health is a phrase recorded involved with you already used criminally foreign influence by people associated with the World Trade Center attack with predicate acts in that context as actually recorded. And since Connecticut interbranch and exception nature tied to them, with at the same time, at a certain time, a victim / hyper victim with overt criminal enterprises, plural, and private ones, and foreign and domestic military. They have roles, hiding life progressions by time uses of locations, all along roads and routes like Route 3. Involved with the names they use to make fake instances of us knowing each other, then we're gonna have to debate what they can't hide. In other words, they use corners of buildings, make exceptions of people knowing each other, and pretend they're lying. Where we can't leave out proper counters to overt criminal enterprises and private ones, and can't leave even in politics with that with logic as no. As known abridged, millions of people will admit on the side we know. I mean, black people's whites of eyes. There's a fake integrity of. There's a fake quality of fact treatment nature with time treatments, with evidence treatments, with subject treatments, with exceptions treatments. So computers work with value progressions, value nature. Computers work with identity. This is my phrase. We are a value / value progression. Computers are mimicking as identities hypervolume to this extent we discern. So each must learn. So the cell nucleus, cell body, cell wall. It is hard to discern a cell nucleus as drawn when they draw it, like the way they do when they draw it. One thing we can constantly see perfectly clear when we look through the microscope at a cell, at what we are taught is to describe as a cell nucleus, cell body, and cell wall slash S, where the cell walls come together to know in the whole body of a tomato or of a part of a plant or a fruit. If you take a transverse section of it and look at it through the microscope, you see cell body, cell nucleus, cell wall. What we're told is the cell nucleus. Well, one thing we could discern it as constantly is three distinct identities of relationship to itself, which is an identity greater than and more finite than, well, as that. And with its reception of gases and of water and its elements and Earth's elements simultaneously in demonstration of the same thing. Boxing, everything is a demonstration of the identity of the hyper native. It is hyper native, the hyper simultaneous, which is hyper native. And so our founders knew that additionally from our own rights and from their own rights and from their own nature of slavery, sickly distinctly from everyone else. See that those the group, not just the group think. Note that phrase, group think, because that was an honest effort to try to summarize what needs. In other words, black and white uses are effectively recorded and employed by the breaching method to measure and maintain other things, others, ourselves, blamed for it. What forced that and used it had nothing to do with that. What it has to do, what it was forcing all kinds of ways is self-value roles with the human volume science, syntactically, the human hyperpossession. Now, there was a hyperpossession over how space works. We will never have control over. It's too big. We are too finite. The only way we can control that is by controlling our identity of relationship and relativity to Earth's a special difference, to our own a special difference. And that is partially wherever we're individually grouped in together. We can't make that identity of making more of itself through temporary / lasting identity. Identity is plural. That's the first thing, a whole bunch of ways that most nature is demonstrating. It generated and is generating more of itself through matter here, or it is forcing it that from here, lethal vadis. We can be led by the hyper invisible because it is still discernible. English was revealed to teach this. Other languages were. Each of the sciences are a certain type of victim / hyper victim. It is easier to blame themselves than to blame the individuals properly, only because mandated law is not followed. And because of, for example, the immigrant populations in our countries, even the countries that have all this technology and unity, in other words, where and how they have even, where and how they have subject treatments that left and leave out. That how there are revelations surging from where and how the suburbs were designed before our founders were even born, our founding parents. Humanity had already been syntactically self-valued as individuals with group differences, and the species volume science applied as another one. And nature kept demonstrating that and will increasingly show demonstrations of it. And the breaching method knew that. And it knew people would have to respond to that, not respond to it. And any exceptions, and it could employ too, to roles, self-defending, arrays of people blaming other things, others, ourselves, as styles of logic, all complete possession of a breaching method, complete hyperpossession / possession of a breaching method, using all exceptions, exception nature, to pretend other to themselves and to others, using all natures of wealth too. So it's they kept and keep collusions and fighting at the same time with the people the most poor and the wealth and the exceptions in exception nature, measured and maintained effectively is where and how. So we have to address the suburbs are a part of a theater that is a part of answers where other answers are being given and effectively used to measure and maintain collusions with that, which are simultaneously and worse simultaneously already timed collusions with overt criminal enterprises and with private ones, and with the insidiousness of the logic of people A through Z, where they are victim predators, victim hyper predators. Everyone had other taught, communicated for them, for our founders, to them. Then our founders left us to communicate for themselves. You can't understand any American history or any other country's history properly if you don't understand how and why they had to counter extort the other founders regarding their motivations, narratives, regarding what was and how it was being used, how they were being used, instances, treatments, instances, people speaking about morality as the formal stewards of the law. Look at New York City. You are a certain type of victim / victim predator to pretend that the Constitution has yet been liberated on a bridge. That's worse than a war zone there. You know, and you're gonna pretend that you don't realize that when you speak about who has a job or not. Let that logic speak. Let that logic speak. But don't let wow. We're speaking for the people in New York City, for example. The little kids inside the stacked buildings. Easiest place to discern. And with the exception nature, uses of that too. We're going to use the hyper evidential. We're going to use the simultaneous, the hyper simultaneous. Nature shows us a breaching method consciously knew that the identities of the law would use phrases like criminal insidiousness and like criminal enterprises and like truth. They would use it as criminal insidiousness natures of true self-value. They would use right to lie as collusions with that identity theft, fraud, slander method, that it only allows collusions with itself, as roles with overt negative predicate acts, methods, and natures, and overt criminal insidiousness natures of positive treatment natures and methods simultaneously, relevant to where and to how they got away so long with attaching every single individual to fake words and ties to other natures of ties to everyone around them, including our family members. They do this. How they get away with it. They even did this they lie about legal cases. WFSB has roles with the FBI and CIA with all conjunctions to Route 3, being coached to pretend I'm. In other words, if police do something, if they're switching names and using predicate acts, and they're plotting to pretend that you say things bad about the police because of that, that's criminally foreign influence. But they're doing it with courts too. But these are the same ones with overt criminal enterprises and private ones since they were kids, using those and having used those courts to stack predicate acts into databases, fake things, fake ties between people, fake natures of ties to be between people. So then the voice that minded their own business, and when they were kids, and in other words, not just one thing. All exception, they're attaching people to fake conversations with others when they're kids. They're putting little magic-based tricks in databases, but we cannot be. They're doing this sickly, distinctly against each age of kids. They know their parents have to go to work. They can't. There's only so many fronts that each person can fight on, syntactically. Where the calm is a possession, where aggressive speech is a possession, involved with sequence shifts, identity theft, fraud, slander. They can't speak with either one correctly because they're getting over on the identity of the simultaneous / hyper simultaneous, so we could discern it. A conjunction is a simultaneous nature / hyper simultaneous nature. For example, everything is a sequence / simultaneous nature. Being an individual, you are a simultaneous nature. You are a sequence nature too, relevant to where and how. The species body and grouped areas, ages, sexes are in demonstration to you by nature, no. Not all with the hyper additional. That's as nature, but it's as criminal insidiousness nature. Criminal insidiousness natures of positive treatments, negative treatments, and identity treatments, of bullying logic treatments, of history treatments. They have criminally foreign influenced logic and delusion self-valued simultaneously. Another thing associated with all the violence and there is complete remote possession of people saying, oh, we need to do something about guns or about violence and mental health. Mental health, the people using the words mental health have roles with predicate acts, wire crime acts and methods, identity theft, fraud, slanders. And people repeat, the FBI has criminally foreign influence uses, roles with criminally foreign influence uses of the word manifesto, how they describe they're hiding things that are constantly, they're answers to what's been causing this. Because we have psychopaths in charge of healthcare, mental health experts. They've been using those databases to fake conversations with kids and adults They have been using the phenomenon of their roles with the best qualities of marijuana for little tricks, for example, where no one wants to have anything to do with drugs. They're making exceptions. They're needing to kill people. They're needing to find other ways to kill people. With overt criminal enterprises and private ones, they have predicate acts with when I was a kid. There are probate judges that have physical delusions, identity delusions, and nature delusions that I never even met, associated with a Judge Killian and other ones I don't know the names of. They're involved with interbranch forging and switching names, and with the Leahy family, and with the Judge. These are people involved with juries criminally foreign influenced, and with courts from backgrounds. A whole bunch of people in the Britain Superior Court, Hartford courts, and their family members have roles with predicate acts against kids with names next to campuses too. When they've been filming the people next to the campuses with the shootings, real or made up, because they have mixed, in other words, they have narratives with Sandy Hook, and the courts have involvements recorded with predicate acts with the Sandy Hook Foundation, and with the roles with investigators. They have fire department databases and names in their family members. So they have each age of family of logic, formal, overt criminal enterprise, private interbranch, needed to hide what nature is demonstrating to each age, actually. Our elderly are worse than not safe and being tortured, and that's being self-value. God blamed on other things other than themselves. What you guys call jobs goes with people defending the logic with their jobs. Don't call that the Constitution. Don't say we have to entertain your logic. You're in negotiation with your bosses. Don't push things on the Constitution or not the Constitution more. Americans never felt what it's like to have Native Americans while we're in a net positive value nature progression. That better than does damage control. Tries to overcome the only word. We need complete our whole species working together. We have nuclear weapons, all kinds of crazy weapons, all kinds of technology and strength, and we're on the base that was set up by the torture slavery method that broke you off, or it changes your words. Just actually does that to everyone anyway. So what they do, there's a little crime method where they have the lawyers pretending they're legitimately investigating things. They have their narratives about how people speak with police that are involved with child abuses. So please, Trantolo and Connecticut lawyers, get WFSB, and the WFSB has people on off the state judicial branch offices, and with conjunctions to it, people associated with Wethersfield Heights, what they refer to as the projects in Wethersfield, distinctly from the projects in Hartford, involved with military, foreign and domestic, involved with people with the World Trade Center, criminally foreign influence, delusions, raw, all natures of investigators, private, public. They have roles with the corners of the street too. They're proofs that they have private investigators planting evidences too, because they have criminally foreign influence uses of time treatments at courts that are one of the things that they left out as evidence, where they would use time simultaneously, too fast, too slow, with witch trials, with Jim Crow treatments, where they would value that being and having been done, because forever nature's course is being gotten over on, denied. It is hypernative pure. Or that one lie. How you doing, John Wick? So we need to heal the nations each. The species body longs that we to speak each. In other words, We have the nuclear. We have what's going on in Ukraine, and they have the logic with this treatments, and they have the experts treatments on. Well, these people know this. Well, see this expert, like in other words, Judge Napolitano has a website. I mean, a YouTube channel called Judging Freedom, and he's got great experts on things on Ukraine war, for example, and about how people say things, and there's interest. These people are going to do this. This is going to happen, and meanwhile, the Ukrainians are dying, and the Russians are dying, and Americans are in this trap, not just dying. So this is inseparable from what goes on in our cities like Hartford, Connecticut, and like New York City, distinctly from our suburbs designed for this, designed to cause negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures, while employed where the only means to cause positive value nature progressions, acts, and natures as self-value roles with criminal insidiousness natures of positive treatments. That were our uses of locations. Exactly the way greater than and more finite than how computers work. This is offensive. They want us to debate this, and then they have people, oh, well, I have faith in the expert. Experts are lying about identity. They're lying about their motivations, and they're valuing the exceptions to pretend other. The social media are being influenced like the Democratic Party and like the Republican parties. They're being, and the exceptions, influence the screen proper uses of exception nature too, because it uses exception nature again additionally, two ways additionally that allow us to be able to check and understand things, but we're being denied proper evidential treatments. They have it obfuscated. You have to read, and then everyone should know off the top of their head what I'm talking about when I say our founders had to counter or extort the other founders. And they all had to lie about their motivations. They had to pretend their motivations were taxes all at the same time, for example. The only reason they had the courage for that, because they were counter extorted. They weren't counter enslaved. They were counter extorted. But the slavery method never left. And when they say our founders owned slaves, that is when they say it from the side as the campus, that is where that slavery is still being furthered against everyone, including still against the communications of our founders and of ourselves. So mandated law is not followed by those who follow it, and they've been roles with uses of instances to hide what really came first, and to hide what I caught them doing on and off the campuses of each age and nature, intercities. I'll show you how to see it, discern it. But you have to get them to fix the fake news predicate acts. So, and their roles with these confessions, because they're using wire crime acts and methods of Wethersfield police that pretend I had communications with them as a kid. They've been referring to things I said. When I made exceptions, when I said things, they said things that were untrue into formal records. So I said things that were untrue relative to it, because we're going to lock this conversation in. Because a former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, has roles with people from Boston College, reportedly, and from New York locations, involved with the Fred Grisey and Mazzucato family, involved with the families that were brought up by ones with verbally and non-verbally confessed, demonstrated, confirmed roles with more child offenders on and off the campuses with the intelligence community, as ones when they were kids had roles, time, recorded predicate acts with overt criminal enterprises and private ones. Natures of identity theft, fraud, slander, falsified police reports roles. This is what's been leading our intelligence community interstate. They have Johnson and Wales and people in Rhode Island involved also with the names involved further with the campuses as they are actually recorded. So the FBI has other, there's also people with the name Ian, and there's neighbors of an Ian. I don't know if that Ian is the one who on Twitter has roles with some upskirt pictures and remote and means to observe remote criminal foreign influence uses of the sense and sensibilities of the stewards of Twitter before being taken over by Elon Musk and since, sickly distinctly. See, the agencies also have Facebook people that families that work with and involved with the development of Facebook, who are involved with what has been intercampuses of each age and nature, including campuses, medical campuses, where and names at locations next to them. This is a method that had already overt criminal enterprises and private ones act with predicate acts in the past, and then they had live progressions from that. This is tied to the immigrations problem. It is also tied to the problem where they maintain the appearance of other things, others ourselves, as the motivations. Where and how New Britain courts, Hartford courts have roles with predicate acts that are culturally themed. People that would make statements when I went by pretending to know me. Someone who was influenced to use the to say El Capitan, who I don't know, but they know my name. A former a Dr. Judd of Central Connecticut State University has roles with departments of education, with the intelligence community, foreign and domestic military, names, families associated with the World Trade Center, and with other countries associated with that. See, that is experts. We have trade. We have roles with all kinds of drugs and medicines crimes, with the military, with psychiatry and psychology, and more that has bled into their roles with lawyers, with the campuses like our medical campuses, and with names next to them, and with the training of police forms effectively used to measure and maintain collusions and cover-ups of collusions having been with where and how they never had an identity as the law, but pretended and spoke other. Certain type of victim slash hyper victim effectively maintained, just like killers in New York City. Worse than killers making them. Only allowed to be manifest. In fact, same people involved with uses of responses to it, subject treatments, follow mandated law for New York and for Connecticut and Rhode Island and Massachusetts, because they have more people involved with the principal child defenders campus and with the medical campuses and fire campuses brought out into it, and the Weathersfield Police Department and the various courts forging and switching names. I caught them at West Hartford locations through time too. They have a whole bunch. They said, I don't know the Dubé family. There's one exception. There are proofs that they took a picture of when I approached him in West Farms Mall, because they were recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. They have West Farms Mall and East Hartford Mall involved with people involved with predicate acts with little kids' campuses and conscious uses of the black-white narrative with their collusions, also with all the other countries, blaming other things, others ourselves, for what then what we're needing to have understood, what forced that, and we used it. Because when you're understanding that, you discern it's still being used that way effectively, for had nothing to do with it, except for where it's using it to get over. So, for example, the people of New York City who are being hurt by this and who are also Black and or Native American, sickly distinctly, it is overtly easier to discern the breaching method, a hyper predicate acts delivery system method. There are proofs that we need to call it. Just like there are proofs that there is that distinct identity of hyper simultaneous. That is not just the species body, the group, and the individual, but it is how and why all the other species are that way too. One thing is showing through about things. I teach us things below. So they have a whole bunch of military, criminally foreign influenced since founding. They have locations in Weathersfield and names on Church Street who used my name. I don't know their names, and some of them I do. Some of them like barely one of them and involved with the intelligence community that made fake exceptions. There was a John DeMoro, also one of the ones around on John DeMoro and a Joe DeMoro and a Heather Hansen recorded also with multiple houses on Church Street, roles with predicate acts at Trinity College and CCSU. They confirmed, demonstrated, recorded preemptively too, and with places in Cromwell, with people from Weathersfield involved with identity theft, fraud, slander, with the intelligence community, where they work, where they live, next to where they live. These are the same ones with overt criminal enterprises and private ones, and more predicate acts with the worst patients of criminals since before they get caught, and against innocent people, recorded consciously, forcing, tricking, hurting, persuading them to pretend they don't realize the uses of those databases, putting fake things in there. The intelligence community to use presidents remotely, both sides of them, they effectively fabricate audio and video transcripts and have the courts and their extended family members at locations saying and pretending to believe things. They're alley-ooping themselves on things. I don't know in other words, this Joshua Julian, I don't know him at all. His name was repeated to me a bunch of times. And the people with the Della Farah family, in the intelligence community, they have the girlfriends of themselves, and they share them, and then they involve them with identity thefts and frauds against strangers, make fake exceptions, and they lock them into contexts where they can't go back and be honest. And little boys and men aren't going to want to go back and tell on little girls. They're not going to want to do it when we're kids or when we're adults. They have the little girls involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, and with their parents involved with the schools. So I'm trying to say, if I wanted to hurt people for that, I would try to do that and sue. It's not about that. I need a response for them forging and switching names. They have a police chief, Cintron, and his daughter, involved also with a John Maiano, involved with the medical community, recorded, confessed, and demonstrated by a whole bunch of people tied to him. He demonstrated to me it was true. And through time, intercities involved, and something to do with his roles with that shopping centers and people with shipping. And with the abuses of the kids of various natures at the same time as roles with the only counters. These are a whole bunch of people with a Violet family, with Hartford Hospital involved with the military at spots next to the Capitol, also involved with a Brian Bone and people along Route 3 and conjunctions to it. And associated with Weathersfield Pizza, involved with wire crime acts and methods with them, and people on off the state judicial branch offices, interstates. There are state police forms and medical with the military too, and uses of those criminal and seditious natures of positive treatments, where and how their roles countering and healing would they forced to be, like wars. These are criminally foreign influence uses of our campuses. Make sure they get onto paper. They're lying about what they feel about our behavior, and because they have criminally foreign influence readings of statutes involved. There are Russians and Ukrainians that also have roles with the families involved with the military, and doctors involved with their patients and criminals with various natures of delusions. Not even a doctor; they have physical delusions, identity delusions, and nature delusions. mixed though, however, simultaneously with overt criminally foreign influence logic and natures of organized crime that they are and have been involved with, that are gotten away with because of how the fact should be nature predicate acts methods involved, with them stacking fake conversations between everyone and everyone around them, and then asking them questions about that. And they invested the branches of government with evidences treatments that they cannot go back and defend. And they are shown this. So they need to make subject treatments and value subject treatments, like with the news networks, where everyone is forced to be a chicken with their head cut off and to speak through others, and to use time treatments where they make subject treatments, leaving out exceptions, exception nature, only allowing speech unaccosted if it's not going to use as evidence whole predicate acts methods, whole actually discern criminal insidious natures of summary convictions and opinions that cannot be defended in ourselves at the same time from what really most insidiously and overtly at the same time exploits criminal insidiousness at all locations, areas, and states, interstates. It's worse than just international. It has had the colonies also grouped, used remotely their instances treatments. How would it motivate roles with such things? We know that colonization was about. How could they for so long, pretend that one campus spoke was a good? They compare themselves to the most. It's easy to be a good campus compared to what's in New York City. Now they make all the exceptions the exception nature and demonstration of the same thing. Science does not speak for the Constitution. Science does not speak for the human volume. And people love to say, well, it's not, there's maintenance to people, the logic that says, well, it's not my job. Or I'm not a psychologist. There's a mental health problem where people who want to think and pretend they're honest have that excuse. And all they're doing is one of those criminal insidious natures maintaining all communications platforms, collusions, wire crime acts and methods. This is a method since before computers, using databases, using the Republic criminally re-engineered, tactically denatured identity of ground, identity of relationship to itself. That which really progresses the human value nature system. I mean, really causes the human value nature system progression. The exceptions in exception nature are where and how is it critical that we must be allowed to demonstrate that, and how there are people that, since we are kids, attaching us and everyone around us to fake words with each other and with others. And they're beginning away with it. A whole bunch of people with the Wethersfield Police have Facebook pages. The Wethersfield Facebook page has a Schumack family involved with a Joshua Schumack, who was influenced with a Pandolf family in the intelligence community. A whole bunch of people on and off Central Connecticut State University and Trinity College. Rolls with some murders and with other natures of organized crime, untimely deaths, and rolls with such, and with the counters to it. As people involved with lawyers too, that have been planting fake ties and natures of ties to people. They have been involved with behavior racketeering. You rolls with criminally foreign influence uses of the depositions, the locations of them, the timing of them, class placements, criminally foreign influence class uses of class placements. There is the intelligence community with Glastonbury and with Bloomfield, on the suburb on the other side of Hartford, too, involved with Central Connecticut State University and with Mike Pandolf and with a whole and Ray Reynolds and a whole bunch of people. I never saw Ray Reynolds on that campus. There was a Lynn and a bit of people with Westbrook, associated with Westbrook, involved with identity theft, fraud, slander, with the intelligence community, people involved with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, on and off the campuses, intercities through time, all along Route 175, Wells Road, through cities. They've been planting evidences as people that had roles with predicate acts on the campuses. There's a James Carone, who's also involved with unmarked police forms and a Lombardo family with criminally foreign influence uses of kids' databases at kids' schools, with the intelligence community's ties to them, with overt criminal enterprises. I don't even know them. This is what the Wethersfield school communicated to me. And this is also where they're forcing everyone to speak through others. And so we're gonna get these people with Hartford Hospital too. The Lombardo family has some fire departments and medical families and military families involved with identity theft, fraud, fake conversation with me, pretended I was yelling things out in the emergency room. And they have one of the guys tied to they have a whole bunch of people tied to my area. This is also where the courts do things to bring things before the courts, where they've been planting evidences and they'll get caught if people make the right value treatments, because they've been caught with overt criminal enterprises and private ones through time. They're even online. There are people with the names so Ray Cololo, Mark Violet, and people with the name Joey Quest, and Aiello have roles. They said with Aiello said he's got roles with he forced, tricked, hurt, persuaded people near me, forced, tricked, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. Joe Aiello was involved with them with predicate acts, with evidence, federal evidences, crime, child abuses when they were kids, and identity thefts and frauds relative. You know, when you're involved with falsified police reports against kids and their family members, fake conversations, fake natures of conversations, bring up subjects criminally, and then pretend people engage them with you. In other words, these are people making us need to use others' names, like Paul Kelly. I don't know Paul Kelly. And then through time, there's something to do with each age of the family members of Paul Kelly in a house near him, across the street from him. Whether it's NBC Connecticut News, WFSB, and Fox Connecticut News, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. There are people with there's I just recently found out the name of the one behind it. There's a Maiano. I don't know his father's name. I never met him before. There's a John Maiano, and he's got brothers. He recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. They're also involved with Joe DeMorals from Wethersfield and Rocky Hill. With the intelligence, a whole bunch of people from the Britain Superior Court involved with friends of his that recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. He's involved with Bryan families and people from Central Connecticut State University involved with them, all along Route 3 through time, and on and off child campuses with child abuses roles, and elderly homes too. They use with the same families roles with it. And they have roles with predicate acts against me at Trinity College and other campuses behind my back. This is where they forge and switch names and force that they put fake things in databases. This is relative to where and to how they have sickly, distinctly worse than extortion against Joe Biden, and worse than extortion against Donald Trump, and worse than extortion against Barack Obama, sickly, distinctly, and against the Native American chiefs too, and against the country's leaders individually grouped together. Every single individual voice who's going to deal with the finite, who's going to deal with the value of sequence true, before the order of the finite of the Republic now. There's the increasing value of understanding that predicate acts delivery system method against the Native Americans. because to describe it properly, it is against that system that we are naturally. Not where nature is criminal insidiousness, however. They even employed that answer. When people say, oh, well, you know how slavery is not natural. And others will say, if it's not natural, why would it be? See, where the law was supposed to be mature and with integrity, they were supposed to answer that properly. Slavery is unnatural, but as criminal insidiousness. And nature demonstrates this. And this is the nature of the Constitution unabridged. Has an identity. But we can only discern it by using by the discernment of nature's nature. And the only increasing value of that. And contemplation of that, which doesn't leave out the smallest finite detail or exception. Doesn't value them being or having been left out, set up to be left out. It doesn't leave out the simultaneous. Look at the design of New York City. We can't afford now to have what it was designed to be unfathomable. In other words, you can't pretend that we're free and entertain that. And the breaching method knew it could measure and maintain that. Other pretended that we're free. New York City is not free, simply distinctly from the suburbs aren't free, let alone New York City. We thank you, people. Have a great day. Many pray, boxing. So please, you guys, force mandated law. They've been using wire crime acts and methods. The WFSB, the people they answer for, they tell them just, okay, in other words, they push things on, and they increase them that way. No, in other words, they have obligations to move on critical things. All we need is to have we need to, they need to be yelled at too, because of how they've been pretending passions and emotions. They've been doing things to make people mad so they could lie about why they think they're mad because of their roles with criminally foreign influence readings of statutes. We'll examine this. We'll examine the lawyers. We can't leave out two of the lawyers. They're involved with the planting of fake motivations because there are criminal foreign influences and names involved, and as their own. This is since they were kids. Everyone forced to speak through others. Everyone. Anyone who, relative to where and to how, is part of the answers to why and how such nonsense that we all know exists keeps getting blamed on other things, others ourselves, rather than overcome. We know the news is fake. To use fake news, use Donald Trump's expression. We know that in other words, what they call practical integrity is fake. We know this when we look at New York City from pictures of it from afar. When we drive by on the highway. If you're in a suburb, if you really use what nature gives us, the suburbs are tactically denatured to cause negative value nature progressions, action nature. Where and how nature shows us, has a method of showing us what's going to cause positive value nature progressions, action natures. The way we know, but with hyper additional ways we know. And taking them out from what we think, what people call it, we know, has been mixed with criminal insidiousness natures of positive treatments, negative treatments, identity treatments. Where and how America's name is not free. Forcing people to debate or pretend it's free. As a criminally, while forcing criminally foreign influence qualities of fact treatment nature, time treatments, for example, and exceptions. They force a quality of fact treatment nature and time treatments because they're difference in the quality of fact treatment nature, so the person could never start with the things that are true our way. The suburbs, the tactically nature. Worse, then the cities were built. While they were building it, who's going to counter that was going to have to do damage control first, because now they're investing mass infrastructure, all the means of the only natures of unity, of the only natures of independence, self-valued still. Criminal insidious natures of unity, of independence. And the chaos was the nature that was trying to, that it is that nature that nobody wants. I mean, it's juxtaposed, it employed where people use isms, people use words like legislation. So we need to heal the minds of our leaders. We have to make them, and everyone at the same time. We have to admit what is recorded is a breaching method against our country's sickly distinctly to keep us valuing how sickly non-distinctly. It can be roles with it can be used to counter the fact-cheating nature impositions of all sides being and having been incapable of defending themselves and of affording short words to protract or to be accosted by predicate acts being and having been stacked in databases, fake things being spoken about people with the intelligence community. Whole bunch of people tied to a Mike Pandoff. And I never met Anthony Pandoff. He's one of the ones on Trinity College and CCSU, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with judges and prosecutors and lawyers on off child campuses, on off adult campuses, fire campuses, medical, military locations, court locations, fabricating things into records. Then these people want to speak about service. They have every nature of positive treatment door and negative treatment door. They're going to show you what's already standing. Fake. We don't have defense. Defense comes through fact, treatment, nature, quality. All in our faces, the Constitution is abridged. The social networks are measured and maintained tools where the agencies are measured and maintained cover-ups of what they were used for already. So they should not pretend. So in other words, please, people who had classes with me, there's a Robert Heimgartner, who kids from my elementary school recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. A former Mayor Gold, and people associated with the former Mayor Gold, and with the Casper family, who I never even saw in my grammar school one time in my life. One time, real second, someone told me, and he was in a classroom, and I saw him from when I was walking by, and that's that's one of the families involved with the his teacher's family was one of the ones involved with the state judicial branch offices, and with the FBI people involved with child abuses through time, as the ones I caught involved with the principal child abuser. There's a Celeste Wells I also don't know. She pretended other at a corner real fast. In other words, there was an instance. It was not legitimate, like a boy girl interaction. They were involved with overt criminal enterprise, private ones, and mayors. And stuff like that. And these are people involved with police forms and stuff like that, too. They'll pretend you're saying something bad about the police. They've been coaching people around me to pretend I say things bad about the police. All exceptions, exception nature. They've been coaching them to use that to pretend the same thing. You have to be aware of what is recorded there and how there are means to record it to observe it, where they have lawyers planting evidences not for legitimate motivations. It means because they need to cover up their real motivations. So a whole bunch of people from Central Connecticut State University have roles with the intelligence community with various natures of mayors, families through times, and locations next to the Department of Motor Vehicles and Department of Transportation locations. For example, they put placements at locations tied to databases of all ages, of all natures, where and how they have overt criminal enterprises and private ones juxtaposed, effectively kept needing to hide illusions and uses of other names in the past roles together, and uses of differences having been used, tactical ulterior than from where so nature is the identity as every instance, because it is the, in other words, and we are leaving out, so in other words, why it's important to not leave out the significance of how Native American rights are sickly distinctly hurt by this, where and how we have fake integrity speaking for the law and for the nature of the law and for the identity of the law. So there are all kinds of natures of organized crime, not just medicine's crimes, that various natures of courts and police forms and that ones as doctors have against elderly, and so at elderly locations, VA locations, they've been blaming mental health like it's a syndrome, and they've been using drugs to shut the people up, and for way worse. And that was sustained, so even way worse is there because it needs chaos of other natures, and it needs order of natures of order, criminal insidious natures of order. We have the people that use words like organization, trying to get people organized, trying to make criminal insidiousness natures of organization. So the mental health community has roles of wire crime acts and methods and mail crime acts and methods. And they have roles of police forms and with professors of acting that demonstrated, they're implying are involved, the ones involved on Church Street with them with predicate acts on CCSU and other, and with the principal child abusers campus while that was being forced. Other was being forced too. And other natures of sexual and medical abuses of the kids with the same ones involved. There's a Leahy family also with his daughter and others. There are two Brendan. There are Brendan Leahy with his son that works with him. They're men and women of a Leahy family that work, and families tied to them that work at Hartford Hospital with foreign and domestic doctors and ones with badges, and foreign and domestic military, and ones associated with the investigation of the World Trade Center, who are involved with abuses of elderly and of children through time, criminally foreign influence uses of elderly homes, of campuses, of their databases, criminally foreign influence uses of investigations of investigators themselves, of their campuses, of their homes, of their family members. So the answer is forgiveness is not to give up, but to blame it, but to keep it blamed on what's causing it the worst, which is the breaching method. For example, relative to what caused slavery, not our founders. Our founders, they couldn't go, okay, we're free from slavery. They would have been killed like that. Our founders were against slavery. We're gonna have to deal with such that was offensively pretended how they got away with it. We have people pretending things about the grades of others that left out things consciously. About the importance of it. For example, there is pseudoscience in the suburbs and in the cities that has failed to use how the suburbs and how the cities are manifest as the hyper evidential. They have failed to use. So evidence is right. Yeah. Vaccines. They're using treatments of investigations of Trump to cover up with the districts of New York have been involved with. And they say that especially the southern district of New York, per the WFSB, CNN, MSNBC, and Fox News, FBI sources involved with wire crime acts and methods and cover-ups through them. And they said they have recorded dishonest faith in their sources and the integrity of the FBI. They have dishonest. They were told this. They were told to blame it on things like the craziness with the people with the groups and groupthink. Well, they know that they have been using it to prevent free speech and to hide stacking fake things into databases. They've been using wire crime acts and methods in the campuses to hide lie progressions, also to maintain that not found out preemptively. They've been using the campuses. They have a whole bunch of campuses uses, Rocky Hill campuses, Weathersfield campuses, and Hartford campuses, and West Hartford campuses are further involved then and now with the names that were timed intercities, roles with predicate acts relative to and as their roles with the child abuses when the principal child abuser was being perpetrated, and more then and now. They have more on Twitter involved with more upskirt pictures involved with that and with the FBI. They should fear God for you bringing up such topics and pretending not to understand. Please follow mandated law for them. Also, YouTube, don't let them set you up. That Ray Cololo comment and those people that put comments on my YouTube page before in the past, they are also ones involved with the former director of the FBI and his co-defendants recorded involved with federal criminally foreign influence uses of databases through time and uses of the cover-ups of that. They should get the hell out of the intelligence community and bring up and stop and confess where and how their families too, not only the interbranch. In fact, they're differentially criminally foreign influence. Sometimes it's their sources that we've missed. We have to get them both, and the breaching method. Then you can just leave everyone blaming the breaching method, and evolution's fruits and gifts appear. Real beings. So they have they have names next to campuses also recorded involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders instances, as people who also recorded pretend passions and emotions online to hide that. And their motivations, narratives before it are also relative because that's what they've been. In other words, these are other methods and motivations than have been addressed since founding when we come to dealing with the predicate acts methods with evidence properly. Someone tell Judge Napolitano, because they've been using his Facebook page, and they have narratives where or either take down your site or put it up. They have that leaving out the FBI and the Weathersfield police involvements with that. Weathersfield police and the FBI also have recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed personal criminally foreign influence uses of their narratives with violence and with advertisements. Ad timed ad placements. They have a Michael Jai White also involved with corruption with sports, where they have roles with it with judges and prosecutors, criminally foreign influence uses of locations, identity.